1 John 3:16, I think this really gives you the heart of it all. In 1 John 3:16, it says this: "This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers. If anyone has material possessions and sees his brother in need, but has no pity on him, how can the love of God be in him?" He says, if you see someone in need, you see a brother in need especially, and you have no pity on them, you have stuff and they don't, but you don't pity them, you don't do anything for them, he goes, how could the love of Christ be in you? How could you can't really be a Christian. Because in verse 16, the verse before, he says, we know love, how? He says, through Christ, that Christ laid down his life for us, and he says, therefore, we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers. See, it's this whole idea of why are you here? You want to be a Christian. You want to follow Christ. And he's saying, what was Christ's example of love? He laid down his life. You've got Christ. You've got God on his throne. Think about this. In heaven, everyone's worshiping him. Life is great. Angels screaming, holy, 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 bowing down before this God. Equality with God, and yet the Bible says he didn't consider that something to be held on to, but instead of holding on to that, he lowered himself, he emptied himself, he humbled himself, he left that, he laid down his position there to come down on earth to take the form of a man. Not just the form of a man, he lowered himself even more and took the form of a servant, washed people's feet. Not just a servant, but a servant that people would spit on and beat up. And not just a servant that people would spit on and beat up, but eventually they would nail him to a cross. He left that, laid down his life, and gave everything to where he's nailed on a cross and still praying for the people. God, forgive them. That's the example that we have to follow, a person laying down his life for us. Why? Why did he do that? Because he loved you. Because he saw that you and I, God in heaven, saw that we were helpless. I can't save myself. I've already ruined my life. I've already done things that are offensive to God. That means at the end of my life, I'm going to be punished by him. There's nothing I can do to change that. And then God says, but I can change that. I'll come down. I'll take the punishment on the cross for you. He saw me as helpless, and he came down. He made me rich. And he says, now, if you are a Christian, you do the same thing for your brothers. He goes, and in fact, if you see someone in need, and you have stuff, and you don't pity them, then you don't have the love of Christ in you. You might still love people. Everyone loves a little bit. But the love of Christ is a love that lays down for others. I want to show you a couple pictures, and I just want to see what you think when you see these pictures. What do you feel when you see that? That's someone's kid. You know? Do you think of that kid as, do you think that kid is as valuable as your kid? I mean, really. I mean, you hear that baby crying in our own room, you know. Is this baby as precious as that one? Go ahead and go to the next one. What do you think when you see that? Do you go, oh, but I had a rough week too? Oh, but I have financial needs. We're just scraping by. It's amazing when you care for the poor how suddenly your problems go away, don't they? And you go, I had a pretty good week. The next one. This one's interesting. It's the last one I'll show you. This actually was an older photo. This is a Pulitzer Prize winning photo of this little girl that's about to die and that vulture just waiting. The photographer who took that got so depressed afterwards that he killed himself. You know, it's just, what do these do to you when you go, okay, here I am in America, I got all this going on, and you know everything about God and how he's a father to the fatherless, a defender of widows, and his true religion is to care for the widows and orphans, don't you just go, okay, what am I doing here then? What is my life supposed to be about? And if I were supposed to be a picture of Christ, and Christ, man, you talk about lowering. I mean, for me to sell everything and give to them, that doesn't even compare to what Christ did for us in humbling himself. And it's like, well, I'm supposed to be like Christ. Every 3.6 seconds, someone dies because of hunger. Boom. Someone just died. 3. Someone else just died. 2, 3. Another person just died. 2, 3. Little kid just died. 2, 3. Infant just died. 2, 3. Mom just died. Every 3 seconds. Every 3.6 seconds. And every one of those people, every snap of the finger, that was a life that's just as valuable as mine. It's just as valuable. And every soul is just as valuable as my soul. Man, and there's this world out there that we need to think about. And sometimes we get in the church and it's all about us. And it's like, well, I didn't quite like this. I didn't quite like that. It's like, you know what? You don't have needs. I mean, if we really looked out there, we'd realize, and if we really gave our lives to people who have nothing, man, this isn't a bummer thing I'm talking about. It really makes your life so wonderful. You just realize the blessing you have.